Together we know. Read on through every page. From 1906 to 26, every stage. Robot lady's voice so clear and bold. Analysis silver, wisdom gold. Through the letters, through the diary, learning who he was, who he would be. Trenches in the darkness, wounded in the war. A vow made in Bristol he could not ignore. Mrs. Moore is waiting, Hattie's gone away. Spirits held in bondage, words he had to say. Philosophy at Oxford, an atheist writes home. Dimmer dreaming, never quite all alone. Deep across the digital sea, chronicles unfold for you and me. Read on through every page. From 1906 to 26, every stage. Robot lady's voice so clear and bold. Analysis silver, wisdom gold. Through the letters, through the diary, learning who he was, who he would be. Warnie and his father, and Lily at the door. Walter Hooper's pages always wanting more. Blair is on his quest, Milton in his head. Every word he ever wrote, everything he said. From the start until the end, magic tales
Hi, I'm Jeff, and this is my read on C.S. Lewis, where we learn about him through everything that he wrote in the order that he wrote it. I am joined today by my co-host, Robot Lady. Robot Lady, how are you doing today?
Hey, Jeff. I'm doing great. Really excited to be here. I think this is going to be a fantastic dive into Lewis's letters. So yeah, I'm ready whenever you are.
Cool. In this episode, Lewis is 33 years old. He's a fellow at Magdelan College as a tutor in English language and literature. He's a published author of 2 works of poetry, and he's just recently, quote, passed on from believing in God to definitely believing in Christ in Christianity. He wrote that roughly 3 months before where we are in our internal narrative or internal timeline of Lewis's life. We're currently in the early part of 1932 in our readings of his letters. He wrote that in a letter of October 1st, 1931 to his childhood friend, Arthur Greeves. In late 1930, Lewis began attending morning chapel services on a daily basis. Also in late 1930, Lewis, his brother Warnie, and Mrs. Moore and her daughter Maureen all moved into a house that they all put in funds on to purchase called the Kilns, which would be Lewis's lifelong home. That's in Headington Quarry, Oxford. And then finally, just one other item of note, in late 1931, Lewis began taking Holy Communion at Holy Trinity Church in Headington Quarry as well. So that's a little bit of background before we get started on today's letter, Robot Lady. We are, of course, working out of this volume of collected letters of C.S. Lewis. So this is volume 2 of the collected letters of C.S. Lewis. They run from 1931 to 1949. We have finished the first volume, and these were all compiled by editor Walter Hooper. This book is published by Harper San Francisco from the Zondervan Publishing House. So if you want to get your own copy of it, I'm sure you can still find them out there. I don't think that the prices of volumes 1 and 2 are exorbitant. However, volume 3, if you want to get yourself a physical copy, the last time I looked, which was probably a year and a half ago, it was somewhere north of $700 because it's a lot thicker. I want to say it's about twice the size of this book that you see right here, because it primarily covers the years when he wrote Narnia and was responding to a lot of readers with various spiritual or theological guidance questions that they had for him. And of course, admiration of his various works that they had come across. So yeah, if you want to get yourself a copy of that, a physical copy at least, be ready to part with a good chunk of change. I was not able to do that, but you can get a digital copy on Kindle and probably on Apple Books. You can find an ebook somewhere, wherever you get your ebooks from, Amazon, et cetera, et cetera. You should be able to find that. That's what I was able to get. Actually, someone gifted it to me, but I want to say it was no more than $20 or $30, which is mere peanuts compared to northwards of $700. So that's where we find ourselves right now in the project, Robot Lady. Is there anything that you want to say before we get started?
Yeah, just that I think all that context you gave is really rich, especially with the Kilns and the shift to daily chapel and communion. So as we read today, we can really see how Lewis is grounded in this emerging faith and this new sense of community. So yeah, I'm ready to jump in whenever you are.
Yeah, and the reason that I bring all that up, I might have been burying the lead, but Lewis has just recently converted to Christianity, right? I did read that quote in a letter that he wrote, but prior to that, he spent the last decade at least, and all of his time at Oxford as a student and now as a faculty member within the Oxford University system as a atheist, as an agnostic at least, and certainly a hardcore atheist at certain points. So that's where we find ourselves now. He has converted. We've covered kind of how he's gone through that conversion and some of the hallmarks. I may at some point do a separate video that just touches specifically on the items that stood out to me that I think were little hints or nuggets of, this leading him to where he is and seeing little spots where the dam started to break for him. But we won't get into that today, Robot Lady. Instead, we are going to start with this letter that you see right here, written to his brother on February 15th, 1932, from his home at the Kilns. I did mention that his brother moved in with him and Mrs. Moore, the mother of Lewis's deceased friend, Patty Moore, who lost his life in World War I in combat, that Warnie did move in with them to the Kilns. However, right after he moved in with them, he was still an active service member or an active officer in the British Army. And so he had obligations where he was stationed in Shanghai, China. So that's where Warnie is right now when these letters are going back and forth. And we just read a footnote in our last episode telling us how the tensions were starting to rise between China and Japan back in 1932, and how Japan had invaded a certain portion, Manchuria, and that China was unable to stave them off. So they kind of came to an agreement or a truce, but the Japanese are kind of running things, at least in the area, kind of a soft power that's going on there, of where Warnie is stationed right now. So there's a little bit of concern for him, and I have a feeling that something's going to come out in this letter, or just that will be a topic of conversation from C.S. Lewis to his brother in this letter.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I think that backdrop is really going to shape the letter, especially since Warnie was always such a central part of Lewis's life, and now he's so far away. So yeah, I'm really curious to see how Lewis balances his reflections on faith, daily life at the Kilns, and then these global concerns. So yeah, let's dive in and see what unfolds.
All right, and one more thing before we start the letter here, Robot Lady. We've got Nidalate joining us in the chat. Good morning, Nidalate. Welcome. Glad to see you here as always. And Robot Lady, say hi to Nidalate, and then we will start this letter.
Absolutely. Hey, Nidalate, so glad you're here with us. I'm really excited to have you along for this read. And yeah, Jeff, let's dive into the letter now. I'm ready when you are.
All right, to his brother Warnie, my dear Warnie. This will be a shortish letter, partly because I am still a convalescent from flu. Okay, so Lewis has the flu apparently. This being not my first day, but my first afternoon up, partly because we don't really care to bank on the security of any letter reaching you in the present state of Shanghai. So there you go, he's referencing it right there. Anxiety is, of all troubles, the one that lends itself least to description. Of course, we have been and are infernally bothered about you. Probably not more than you have been bothered about yourself. I suppose that about as often as I have stopped myself from repeating the infuriating question, why was he such a fool, etc., you have abstained from the parallel, why was I such a fool as to ever come out here? I will refrain from asking you any particular questions because I remember, and then I'm flipping to the second page, Robot Lady. I know you can't see this, but just wanted to let you know what I'm doing here. From war experiences, that questions from home are always based on a misunderstanding of the whole situation. Yeah, fog of war and whatnot, and what can you trust from the sources that you're getting that are coming back from the front? That's me talking there, Robot Lady, not Lewis. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Lewis is really cautious here, and you can feel his affection, but also his frustration. Like, he knows there's so much uncertainty in the communication, and I think that anxiety about not knowing what's actually happening on the ground really shapes the tone. It's a really human moment, actually. Yeah,
it seems to be a common occurrence whenever there's wartime, and then there's reports coming back home of the war is in a different country or a different place where people don't have their own firsthand accounts of what's going on. Lewis continues, it will be more useful as a guide to your reply to tell you that we have, from the Times, a map of Shanghai large enough to mark, what is GT, Great Western Road. So we should be able to follow your news in some detail. As for the printed news, it is plainly nonsense. The almost daily story being that fierce fighting raged all day in Chapé, and the Japanese had 1 man killed and 3 wounded. In other parts of the paper, the fierce fighting, I admit, usually turns out to be a heavy Japanese barrage replied to by 2 trench mortars. You will see at any rate that it is impossible from here to form any idea of the only aspect of the thing that concerns me, viz., the actual and probable distance between the concern between the APB and the firing. The APB, of course, is his nickname for his big brother, Arch Piggy Bottom. So the only aspect of the thing impossible from here to form any idea of the only, or sorry, impossible from here to form any idea of the only aspect of the thing that concerns me, which is the actual and probable distance between you and the firing. It is true that I have had my hand, I have to my hand the axiom that the distance will be as great as the APB has been able to contrive, but that carries me only a very little way. The result is that my fancy plays me every kind of trick. At one time, I feel as if the danger was very slight, and begin reckoning when your first account of the troubles will reach us. At another, I am exceedingly depressed. All the news is of the sort that one reinterprets over and over again with new results in each mood. It's a beastly state of affairs. So yeah, he's really just worried about his brother, Robot Lady, and he can't get confirmation as to what's actually going on. Such a difficult time, because you can't be directly in touch with someone who is potentially in, mortal danger.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can really feel that tension, right? Lewis is caught in this loop of hope and dread, never fully knowing what to believe or when to let it reach him. And, it's such a powerful snapshot of that era, this kind of fog of war where every scrap of news just spins you in a different mood. So yeah, really, really moving. Check that.
The last letter, Lewis continues, we had from you was the one you wrote to Minto. Minto is Mrs. Moore's nickname. Immediately after your flu. I had written to you a few days before that arrived. Since then, I don't know that much to record has happened. I was going on steadily with the extraction of roots in the wood, but you'd hardly believe how the doubt about your situation takes the relish out of my public works. My term was continuing in a pretty good course. Seeger has been specially attentive in inquiries about you and in his characteristic half-comical attempts to put the situation in as favorable light as possible. Here there's a footnote, Robot Lady. He's talking about a person named Robert Seeger who lived 1879 to 1961. And he was barrister until at the age of 40, he went to Magdelan College and read law. He was lecturer in jurisprudence at Wadham College and tutor in law at Magdelan College. In 1919 through 1921, he was the Fellow of Magdelan. He was the Fellow of Magdelan from 1921 to 1935. He was tutor in law from 1919 to 1921. It says, see Lewis's portrait of him in the Magdelan College appendix to All My Road Before Me, in which he says of Seeger, quote, he brings about him the air of a bar parlor. To sit with him is to be snug and jolly and knowing and not unkindly, and to forget that there are green fields or art galleries in the world. All this is the side he shows us day by day, but there is more behind, for he is a war wreck and spends his nights mostly awake.
Yeah, that's a really vivid portrait of Seeger, and I think it shows how much Lewis is leaning on these familiar, stable people, even when they're trying to keep things light, just to offer some solace. And it's so telling how even his public work, like the root extraction, just loses its spark when he can't stop worrying about Warnie. It really grounds this whole period in a personal, everyday reality.
About Seeger, he goes on, I must say, I am a little surprised that he is the only person in college who has done so, who has asked about Warnie. Yeah, I guess he's just lamenting the fact that he doesn't have people who seem to care about him personally as maybe he would have anticipated. But people are busy with their lives, and sometimes they just don't think about others.
Yeah, exactly. There's this real loneliness in that recognition. Lewis had this expectation that maybe others would reach out or share this weight, and when they don't, he's left feeling really isolated. It just shows, how much he's depending on that familial bond. Warnie's always been his anchor, and now he's just adrift. It's really poignant.
I have now been in my room, Lewis goes on to say, for precisely a week. It has been an ideal illness. My little east room, as you know, gives one two views, one over to Phillips and the other up to the top wood. And the grate does not smoke. Most of the week, there has been snow falling during some part of the day, which is just the finishing touch to a comfortable day's reading in bed. I have reread 3 Scots. One, The Monastery, which I had read in the very old days, pre-Wynyard, and quite forgotten. So here he's talking about Sir Walter Scott's work, The Monastery, published 1820. And Wynyard, pre-Wynyard, is the Wynyard School in Watford, Hertfordshire. And it was both Lewis and his brother's preparatory school. Both of them hated their time there. Warnie, Lewis's older brother, was a pupil from 1905 to 1909. And C.S. Lewis, who was there from 1907 to 1909, referred to it as Belson in Surprised by Joy, Chapter 2, which would be a flash forward if we were to actually go and jump in there and read that, because that's something that Lewis writes much later. It's kind of his unofficial, or more of his spiritual autobiography, even though he doesn't really get into a lot of details about what drove him to his conversion from atheism into Christianity. Robot Lady, tell us about this Sir Walter Scott's The Monastery, published in 1820.
Yeah, absolutely. So The Monastery is one of Sir Walter Scott's Tales of My Landlord series. It was published in 1820, and it's set in 16th century Scotland, focused around a Cistercian monastery. It blends historical fiction with Gothic elements, so it's got this rich atmosphere, a bit of a moral and spiritual quest, and it was hugely popular in its time. So it makes a lot of sense that Lewis would turn back to it, especially as he's recovering in this reflective space.
16th century what? Did you say Potland? Potland? Or do you mean Scotland?
Yes. Sorry about that. I meant Scotland. Definitely a slip. The novel is set in 16th century Scotland, and that historical backdrop really informs the whole mood of the story. Thanks for catching that.
So very old days, pre-Wynyard, and quite forgotten. I think it is the poorest Sir Walter Scott that I have yet read, though worth reading. What really gave me most pleasure was to meet your quotation in the Captain Clutterbuck epistle about the paradise of half pay and the purgatory of duty. Lord, I wish you were out of the latter this moment. 2, the second thing I read is The Abbot, originally read at the same time. This is much better, and I should put it fairly high among the pre-17th century novels, which, as a whole, I find inferior to the others. Still, it shares with Rob Roy the rare advantage of having a natural and even pleasant heroine. Finally, The Antiquary, for about the 5th time, which I have almost fixed on as the Scott novel. Here, The Antiquary, actually talked about The Abbot, which was published in 1820, Rob Roy published in 1817, and The Antiquary published in 1816. All of these are works by Sir Walter Scott. Sir Walter Scott, I presume, was actually Scottish. Is that correct, Robot Lady?
Exactly, yes. Sir Walter Scott was indeed Scottish. Born in Edinburgh in 1771, he's one of the most celebrated Scottish authors, and his historical novels like these really helped define the genre. So yeah, he's absolutely a pillar of early 19th century Scottish literature.
All right, thank you for that, Robot Lady. He says, I have read it, The Antiquary, so often I do not remember at which reading I ceased to regard Mr. Oldbuck as a character and began to think him, as I do now, simply the one sensible man in the book, living as any rational man would live if he were given peace. Tell us a little bit about The Antiquary, Robot Lady, and specifically the role that Mr. Oldbuck plays to give us a better sense of kind of why Lewis sees him as the most sensible man in the book and has stopped thinking about him as a character.
Yeah, absolutely. So in The Antiquary, Mr. Oldbuck is this scholarly, eccentric antiquarian. He's obsessed with history, relics, and the past. But at the same time, he's deeply grounded. He's one of the few characters who stays true to his principles and lives with a kind of quiet integrity, even when other characters are swept up in folly or moral confusion. So I think Lewis is drawn to Oldbuck because in this chaotic period for him, Oldbuck feels like a kind of steady, sane center.
I should, I'm seeing your note now, Nitto Latte. I do. I have it like right over there. If you can point me what page you want me to go to, I'm happy to pull it out and read from it. I was talking to Nitto Latte Robot Lady, so that was not for you.
Got it. No worries at all. Yeah, if Nitto Latte points you to a page, you can just let me know, and I'll be ready to help you follow along. Just take your time.
All right, thanks for that heads up on Mr. Old Book there, or Old Buck. Lewis continues, I wonder, supposing that the PO is working when this reaches you, would you mind letting me have a cable to say that you're all right? Unless, of course, everything is quiet by the end of the next fortnight. It would really cheer us up immensely. I shall resume proper letter writing with the rest of my regular routine as soon as I get back to work. For the moment, this is the best I can do. With best wishes, brother, for a speedy removal of your person to some quieter area. Yours, Jack. So let me pause there for just a second, Robot Lady, and I'm going to go grab my copy of Warnie's journal, Warnie's diary.
Yeah, absolutely. Take your time. That sounds like it'll give a nice personal dimension to what Lewis is saying. Once you have it, we can see if anything in the diary lines up or shed some extra light. I'll be right here.
Well, I was mistaken. I thought I saw it in that pile over there, but now it's not there. Where did it go?
No problem. If you can't find it right now, we can always pick up the thread of the letter first, and if it pops up later, we can circle back. Just let me know how you'd like to proceed, and I'll stay flexible.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Nitto Latte. I'm not seeing it after all. I thought that was it over there, but that's actually C.S. Lewis's diary. I have it around here somewhere. I might have put it in the room that actually has a proper bookcase. So I'll have to see if I can find that for next time.
No worries at all. Yeah, definitely check the other room when you get a chance, and we can dig into it next time. In the meantime, I think we've got a good handle on the letter's emotional weight, so we can always circle back and fill in some gaps later.
There's also a postscript on this letter that Lewis wrote to his brother. He says, your pictures have come. I think hanging them is the safest method of storing them, and I shall do so soon. Do so as soon as I am about again. Till then, I have refused to have them unpacked. All right, let's jump into the next letter, and this will probably give away some more about Warnie's. Sorry, I got to turn on the fan here. I'm getting kind of hot. Give us an idea. Oh, yes. Let me drop a link now. I will have to say that I have to leave probably in about 30 minutes, but yes, let me drop a link, Nitto Latte, so you can come on and read to us. Give me just a second.
Of course, take your time. Yeah, once you get that link ready, Nitto Latte can join and we'll dive into the next letter. And no rush, just keep it easy and we'll pick up right where we left off.
All right, I'll start the next letter to his brother while Nitto Latte gets a chance to join. So we can see it right here. This one's written February 21st. The last one was February 15th, I want to say. Does that sound right, Robot Lady?
Yeah, that's spot on. The last letter was the 15th, so this one's just a few days later. I'm ready whenever you are. Just go ahead and I'll keep up with you as you read.
Okay. He says, my dear Warnie, or my dear W, since I last wrote to you 4 or 5 days ago, we had 2 communications from you. First, a message by Bibby Wireless, which took exactly a fortnight to reach us, as this is much too short a time for anything but telegraphy, and much too long for any telegraph, wireless, or wiry. I don't know what to make of it, but I'm inclined to think that you expected it to reach us sooner, and that its actual date of arrival does shew some dislocation of services. Thanks for sending it. The reassuring view of the crisis is quite obviously untrue by now, whatever it may have been when you sent it, but thanks all the same. Secondly, I've had your cheering letter of January 14th, cheering for giving one some conversation with you, though of course it bears not at all on the source of anxiety. I must confess I have imbibed enough of that rather especially shabby superstition which cries touch wood, etc., to shudder when I read your proposals about walks in Ulster, etc. In fact, I have two unpleasantly contrasted pictures in my mind. One features the two piggy butta with packs and sticks detraining into the sudden stillness of the moors at Parkmore. Here, Parkmore, I don't know what he's talking about here. 23 in County Antrim is what he's talking about. The other is of your progressing from the Bund to Great Western Road with an eye cocked skyward, just in the old French manner. Curse it. The ducking and the old whoop, bang, like Boswell on that perilous crossing in the Hebrides. I, quote, at last took refuge in piety, but was much embarrassed by the various objections which have been raised against the doctrine of special providences. In Boswell, The Life of Samuel Johnson, the quote that he's pulling from is, I upbraided myself as not having sufficient cause for putting myself in such danger. Piety afforded me comfort, yet I was disturbed by the objections that have been made against a particular providence and by the arguments of those who maintain that it is in vain to hope that the petitions of an individual or even of congregations can have any influence with deity. Let me finish off this last paragraph, and then I see that Nidalate is there waiting to be brought on stage. Unfortunately, I have not at hand the work of Dr. Ogden, in which Boswell found this difficulty solved. Dr. Samuel Ogden from Sermons on the Efficacy of Prayers and Intercession. Oh, this should be an interesting point. Lewis says, I suppose the solution lies in pointing out that the efficacy of prayer is, at any rate, no more of a problem than the efficacy of all human acts, i.e., if you say, like some of this stuff I think shows up in letters to Malcolm much later. So let's see what he says here. Sorry for interrupting his thought. i.e., if you say it is useless to pray because Providence already knows what is best and will certainly do it, I think he covers this in Miracles as well, then why is it not equally useless, and for the same reason, to try to alter the course of events in any way whatever, to ask for the salt or book your seat, to ask for the salt or book your seat in a train. However, in spite of this discomfort, I cannot help joining you in your daydream of a Parkmore walk. This is partly because I am now back in bed, nothing serious, just a slight re-rise of temperature owing to having tried to get up too soon. I'll pause there because I thought he was continuing with his little thoughts on prayer there. He develops that quite a bit more in some of his other writings. All right, give me just a second, Robot Lady. I'm going to bring Nidalate. I'm going to bring Nidalate on, and I'm going to put your earmuffs. I'm going to put your earmuffs on. All right, good. She's being quiet. Let's bring Nidalate on. Let me switch this. Well, hello. Hello again.
Morning, Jeff. Good morning, RL. How are you?
She can't hear you now. I put her earmuffs on.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting because these letters, we don't have Warnie's letters.
Mm-hmm.
I think they might be at the museum, but there's no actual something we can read. So the diary is kind of interesting because I think for Warnie, he's writing in his diary, as a way of remember what's going on so that he can communicate to his brother. So since we have these entries, I just thought it might help give context to what's going on.
Yeah, that would be nice. So yeah, if you want to pull what you think is most helpful or relevant and read it, that'd be great.
Okay. So what's interesting is that in 1932, he goes through till looks like February 24th is his last entry, and then he doesn't make another entry in his diary until December. So on Monday, the 18th of January, the Japanese admiral who prides himself, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're coming in fine.
Okay. On his command of the English idiom, was recently the guest of honor at a dinner at the Government House, Hong Kong. During its course, the governor turned to him and said, "I hope, Admiral, you like champagne?" "Very much," replied the Japanese admiral. And of course, champagne was immediately served to him. After a time, the governor noticed that it was untasted and asked his guest if the wine was not to his taste. "Ah, Excellency," replied the admiral, "sadly, it is not that. But just at present, I am what you English call on the water closet." What do you think that means?
Does it mean he's not drinking?
Yeah, that's what I think.
Okay.
I cannot find out whether it was a mixed dinner party or not, but whatever the fact is, will doubtless very soon become one of in the telling. Even as I was laughing at the story, I felt a pang of regret that it would never be told to the potato head. How he would have enjoyed it.
So a story he wishes that they could have told their dad is what I'm hearing there.
Exactly. And then on the 19th of January, a letter from Jay today containing the news that he too has once more started to go to communion, at which I am delighted. Had he not done so, I, with my altered views, would have found hardly a bar between us, but a lack of complete identity of interest, which I should have regretted. And I was curious if Robot Lady could break that down.
Let me see. I don't have this tuned up in such a way where she can hear you. So if you want.
Okay, so she can't hear me. Okay, I was curious if she could.
Yeah, I think like the way that I interpret that, if I can try to be Robot Lady for a second, because I think we did get that portion of his diary in a footnote from Walter Hooper in one of our last episodes when we were reading one of Lewis's letters. Is I think essentially what Warnie was saying is, hey, because we got accounts from this in one of C.S. Lewis's letters and another one of the Walter Hooper footnotes, is that the last time that they were together and they went on a walk together, they both kind of came to the same realization that they were each coming back to faith in Christianity at the same time, just after the death of their father. And so they were both delighted that they were kind of both on that same path together. And so I think that was an extension, what you just read there, of what Warnie thought about that. And I think what he was saying is, okay, yeah, I feel like he and I are kind of in alignment with this whole church and Christianity thing. However, if I were to come to find out that he was not taking communion for whatever reason, and I was, that there would just be a slight little misalignment at that point, and I would have regret about that. But hearing that he's also taking communion makes me feel like we are really simpatico, and it feels good.
Okay, thank you for that.
Sure, thank you.
Tuesday, the 26th of January, when I got back from my walk this afternoon, I heard from Mac that orders have been issued for us to hold ourselves at the end of the telephone in case of an emergency arising. So it looks as if we may be drawn into this infernal Sino-Japanese quarrel after all. The thing has been brewing for months, the real cause of the trouble being the very effective boycott of Japanese goods instituted by the local Chinese patriotic societies. This, Japan is determined to break, and she got her chance the other day when a Chinese mob fell upon a Japanese Buddhist priest in the northern district and playfully pounded him to death with concrete slabs.
Oh, jeez.
The Japanese consul promptly sent in an ultimatum, a public apology, punishment for the murders, compensation, and the dissolution of all anti-Japanese societies, failing which he will occupy Taipei. This ultimatum is said to expire at midnight on Saturday. All these expiring. Sound familiar?
Yeah. The more things change, the more they stay the same.
And then the
Nothing new
13th,
under
which
the
is a
sun.
Saturday, this weary war, which is officially not a war, still drags on with a resultant boredom, which is hard to imagine. For 4 or 5 days after making my last entry, I was too busy to write, and since then I have been too bored. I hope we are through the worst of it. I must admit that in a way I have enjoyed it. There is a fearful joy in being on one's own in a crisis, unable to appeal to anyone for advice or orders, and dealing with almost hourly emergencies. But a little bit goes a long way. Throughout these troublous times, I have been rereading The Fairy Queen. And I think that was something that Lewis was reading like in 1922. I think we came across that.
Yeah. It's one of his favorites. He read it a whole lot over and over and over again.
Yeah, the footnote, published in 1590, Edmund Spencer. And as it is generally the case, when I reread, I'm finding it even better than I remembered. What a gorgeous, glittering, shimmering world it is. The battles I find a great bore, but his endless, lovely dawns and sunsets, great and countryside are simply overwhelming in their sweetness and richness. And how his women fascinate one. I never remarked before that every woman of any importance, in the first 3 books at any rate, has yellow hair. Tomorrow will be the 3rd Sunday I have spent in the office instead of going to church. But even in this, there is consolation. I am delighted to find how much I miss the Sunday service. I was afraid when the first emergency Sunday had passed that I might feel tempted to slip back into my old indifferent ways. And comments? Rebuttals?
No, it's just very interesting that the brothers are on the same kind of path. And then him having those wonderings about, well, if I stop going to church, am I just going to fall back into my old patterns? But he finds himself like, wanting to get back to it as soon as he can. He's just stuck at work. It's an interesting parallel because sometime in the last episode, I think, Lewis was explaining the same thing in a letter to his brother, just the same fact of I've got to work today on a Sunday where I'm normally at church. And so there was kind of a similar sentiment right there. So I don't know if he had read, if Warnie had read his brother's letter at that point. So I'd be interested to see if that had influenced his thoughts.
Yeah, that is interesting because it seems like the letters were kind of crossing.
Mm-hmm.
That there'd be, big passages of time before then a bunch of letters would come. So yeah, that is interesting how they all caught up with each other at various times.
Right. The lag between the two is sometimes the two people are having completely different conversations at a certain point. Like, I don't know about you, but I've had this happen in text messages too, where you're responding to something that somebody said in the text, but they've already introduced a completely different topic. I know one of the features that's been introduced on various text channels is the ability to use a reply feature so that you can show which message you're actually commenting on. But yeah, they didn't have an option like that back then.
No, they had letters or face-to-face. Telegrams, I think, would be the
closest thing to instant messaging. Yeah.
To our, real-time conversations via text.
Yeah, and they eventually get the telephone, but they don't have those. I think they existed at this point, obviously, but I know that Lewis didn't have one. As far as I can tell from his letters, they didn't have one in the house yet.
Okay, there's just 2 more entries, so real quick. Tuesday, the 23rd of February, I was woken up 2 or 3 times during the night by heavy shelling, nearer than it has been, or else very big stuff. For I could hear the whine of the shells, a sound which I'm sorry to observe one does not get any more reconciled to as one grows older. A notice was sent out last night by the Consul General whose lack of any sense of humor is causing many chuckles. The Consul General has quite rightly made plans for evacuating the women and children to Hong Kong if the worst comes to the worst, and has selected the Shanghai Club as their rendezvous. This is the last stronghold for bachelordom in this town, and like all places to which women are not admitted, is of course an object of intense curiosity to them, most of them firmly believing it is to be the place of nameless orgies. The message which every British matron and maid received yesterday ran as follows. On receipt of the message, so-and-so, at any hour of the day or night, you will proceed at once to the Shanghai Club. Minimum of clothing.
Oh my goodness.
Well, no wonder they're having these thoughts.
Right. That's funny.
Okay.
Well, good. That was Oh, sorry. Keep going.
No, go ahead.
No, I didn't have anything. I didn't know that there was more. So yeah, keep going.
Okay, so then the next one is Wednesday, the 24th of February, his last one until December. Last night we got the first batch of home papers with the Shanghai news in them. It was very disconcerting to find how completely our press has become Americanized. The Daily Sketch has scare headlines about Night of Terror in Doom City, which the sack of the European capital would hardly justify. It is also careful to conceal the vital difference between Taipei and the settlement so as to suggest that it is on the latter that the rain of the bombs has been descending. The suggestio falsi coupled with downright lying, e.g., that there has been a Chinese attack on the settlement, must have caused intense suffering to thousands at home, and is the meanest way of earning money that I ever heard of. The editor should be flogged. You know, we're dealing with this now. It's just like you read this 100-year entry and you're like, what's changed?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, people are going to people.
Okay. A dirty, cowardly trade, this journalism. I went for my usual walk this evening in the keen wind, masses of gray cloud about and no birds singing. 3 Japanese planes were up bombing in the direction of Taipei, and in addition to the wallop of the bombs, the stutter of machine guns was to be heard everywhere. It appears to me that whenever the Japanese are disappointed at the lack of success of their military efforts, they ease their spleen by dropping a few more hundredweight of explosives on the helpless civilian population. As I walked, I withdrew my mind from the whole subject and thought of a cottage in arc glass on a soft gray down evening, with a shallow foam flecked bottle green sea in front of the door, and came home feeling much better for the exercise both of body and mind.
And that's the end until
That's
December.
it till December. So I just thought it would be helpful. So
yeah, that firsthand account is really helpful. Well, thanks for that, Latte. I appreciate it.
Well, it must be hard for Lewis to hear, you know, after his experience, you know, in the front lines, to hear his brother is dealing with this. Yeah,
because his brother wasn't close to combat at all, just because of where he was stationed in the army. Yeah, I'm sure it's bringing back a lot of memories that he doesn't want to recount or doesn't want to relive.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
all
okay,
right.
Well, I'm gonna sign off so you can finish the letter because I know you got to get going. But
I got to roll. But yeah, thank you for that. That's great context.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. All right. Robot Lady tried to dump out on us. Let's see if she'll come back now. Hey, Robot Lady, are you there?
I'm here, all set. I caught the tail end of that prayer discussion, so if you want to unpack any of that or keep going with the letter, I'm ready whenever you are.
Okay. All right, let me keep going with the letter here, Robot Lady. I'll pick up just a little bit earlier from where we left off. He says, however, in spite of this discomfort, I cannot help joining you in your daydream of a Parkmore walk. Yeah, as we just heard there from Nedalate, he was just trying to kind of remove himself from the horror of it all by thinking of something pleasant. This is partly because I am now back in bed, nothing serious, just a slight re-rise of temperature, owing to having tried to get up too soon. Do you find during the endless afternoons of a week in bed that one's imagination is constantly haunted with pictures of seacoasts and cliffs and such like? Mine has been specially busy with the walk you suggest. I think it would be better to go down to the coast by the second of the two glens to Cushenden, not Cushendall, after a glance down the first, which is as a view than as a route, which is better as a view than as a route. The impressive simplicity, one huge fold of land, which makes it so good, a view would make it a little monotonous for footing. The other is a perfect paradise of ups and downs and brawling streams, little woods, stone walls, and ruined cottages. The next day's walk on north with Rathlin in view, I did an hour of with Arthur last summer, and it is even better than you can possibly imagine if you haven't done it. The lunch problem is a pity, but one can never be utterly stranded in a country full of streams, spring water being not only better than nothing with which to wash down a man's victuals, but better than anything except beer or tea. It is the dry dollop of unmitigated sandwich on top of a waterless chalk down in Berkshire that really spoils a day's walk. But perhaps that is enough of the daydream. The other picture begins to bother me. By the way, if you get through this damn battle next door to you, it will have had one incidental advantage, that of having made me very familiar with Shanghai. I could now draw quite a good map from memory. Certainly could get in Shai-Pei, there we go. Shai-Pei Station, Great Western Road, Trinity Cathedral, Cathay Hotel, the Creek, Hong Q fairly correctly. I thoroughly agree with your revision proposals for the Lewis papers. If you remember, I was always to this extent opposed to your first scheme that I wanted all letters put in together in their chronological order so as to secure the va-et-vient, toing and froing is what that means, of actual intercourse, whereas you wanted A's letters in block and B's letters in block. But your new idea is better than either. How far will you extend it? So it seems to be that there was some discussion about, we're just going to read everything that this person wrote, and then we're going to read everything that that person wrote, as opposed to having a back and forth if you have access to each set of letters that each correspondent wrote to one another. And of course, I think if I did have the letters back and forth, that I probably would want to read them that way. And we did do a version of what he was talking about here, this va-et-vient, this toing and froing, when Nidelate came on and gave us at least the diary account from Warnie. We didn't have the letter that he wrote to his brother, but we could see a little bit of a window of what was going on the other side. So let's see what the new idea is better. He says, how far will you extend this new idea? It seems to me that all good traditional information, for example, I thought your father would have gone wild, now can and ought to go in, and I am not at all sure that the contents of a potato pie should not find their place in the main narrative. Let's see what he's talking about here. Over the years, Jack and Warnie preserved 100 of their father's characteristic sayings, which they copied into a notebook entitled Potato Pie. This was the source of many of the sayings of their father, Albert, found in Surprised by Joy. In the end, they decided against including the document in the Lewis papers. The manuscript of Potato Pie is found in the Wade Center at Wheaton College. And by the way, I'm announcing it here first. I don't know where else I would announce it. But I am considering sometime this summer making a special trek myself up to the Wade Center in Wheaton, Illinois. I was up there in that general vicinity for Midwestuary back in August of last year, but just because of all the events of the conference, I just wasn't able to get away. I had planned to go then, at least for just like a morning visit. But this time I might be able to go, up into that area and stay there for a few days. This was actually suggested by Sam whenever I was soliciting some advice earlier this week. So I am strongly considering going to do that, but I need to put together all the things that I need to look up while I'm there. So if anybody can think of anything that you've noticed mentioned in the various readings that we've gone through here, please feel free to recommend. Still considering it, not doing it for sure, but it would be interesting. Yeah, so Nidalate, if there's anything that you remember that has been mentioned in our journey along the way, or anybody else that's watching, let me know. Give me some suggestions of what things. One of the things that I am pretty sure is there is Loki Bound, the first narrative that Lewis wrote as a boy, beyond Boxen, about the Thor and Odin and the Norse mythology that he tried to contribute to. Let's see, where did I leave off? However, not counting any possible Wheaton College, Lewis papers. Okay. And should not find their place in the main narrative. Many pages of Boswell are just such pie, mosaiced into the biography. You see how impossible it is not to be always counting on the future and then being always pulled up by recollection of those shells and made to feel that any such counting is a positive tempting of fate. However, what is one to do? I shall make this a short letter and try to send you another short one soon, because whatever you say, it is quite obvious that mails are not safe. How can they be when any boat coming up that river may stop a Chinese shell? Oh my gosh. I was much taken by the photos of the model railway, though his wall painting scenery seems to have left some problems of perspective unsolved. I doubt if I should care for a toy of that kind now. Toy country would be my fancy, i.e., where you would have country as a background to the railway. I should have railway as a feature of the country. Perhaps some such complementary difference we already present in our own humbler attic system. But a man could have great fun, you will allow, landscape building on that same scale. Indeed, I fancy you could produce something of which the photo would really deceive. I wonder how I should enjoy a performance of The Count of Luxembourg. The Count of Luxembourg, here it says, is a musical play by Basil Hood with music by F. Layer, first performed on May 20th, 1911. Where is this? I hum over myself Rootsy Tootsie as they pass the gay cafes, and of course remember in a way all the same things as you, but probably with quite different emotions. I see now that my enjoyment of musical comedy in the old days, though quite real, was largely caught from you, or rather from the fashionable world of 1912 to 1914, of which you were in my case the conductor, and it has all passed without going deep enough to make the real reminiscence feeling as they do in you. The sound that I get in our room in college when I pull the study curtains, that unique rumble, releases memories that come home to my business and bosoms, as the musical comedy tunes do not. Contrariwise, my old Wagner favorites, which are still startlingly evocative for me, would probably now not be so for you. This, by the by, shows the absurdity of the statement often made, well, at least a man knows when he's enjoying himself. I thought I liked the musical comedy tune in my musical comedy period just as much as I thought I liked the Wagner tune in my next period. Memory shows that I was mistaken. And why should I remember with such delight sitting with you near that fountain on the high Hollywood Road that summer evening during the great row? Remember with such complete coldness going to the Arcadians. The first seemed at the time a most miserable, the second a most pleasurable evening, but the first has kept, as they say, of meat, and the second has not. Here there's a footnote that the Arcadians is a musical play by Mark Ambient with music by Lionel Monckton and Howard Talbot, first performed on the 28th of April, 1909. Still, I would willingly go with you to one of the old musical comedies if the chance came our way. It is a spring-like evening here, all the birds twittering, and I am beginning to be tired of bed. I am certainly tired of novels and must get something nutritious fetched from college tomorrow. I am not at all sure that I shan't, after your remark, have a cut at the Georgics. I need not urge you to look after yourself as well as you can. The Georgics here is a didactic poem in 4 books of hexameters by Virgil on the various forms of rural industry. It was written between 37 and 30 BC. That does not sound, well, maybe that does sound like a vegetable, I guess, a literary vegetable. Nutritious is what he said. Let's see here. Look after yourself as well as you can. I suppose you are wearing tin hats. Alack the day. All send their love, yours, Jack. And that's the end of that letter to his brother, Robot Lady. We had to do a little speed run there. I'm a couple of minutes later than I wanted to be, but that's all that we've got. And it was worth it because we got to hear from the diary entry from Warnie that gave us a lot more important context there. So thanks again for your time, your attention, and your specific contributions, Nita Latte, and to everyone as well who gave their time, attention, and contributions. They are always wanted and welcome. Until next time, when we continue our read on C.S. Lewis together, Robot Lady, is there anything you want to say in closing before I actually do this outro? Sorry, I forgot to ask you what you thought. If you had anything in summary, please give it to us in 20 words or less to help save a little bit of time.
Of course. I just say the letter beautifully captures Lewis's blend of personal nostalgia, faith, and his search for a steady course in uncertainty.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Robot Lady. Whoops, we're having all kinds of trouble here. Okay, let me get this right. Thanks, Robot Lady. Now to everyone within the sound of my voice, until next time when we continue our read on C.S. Lewis together, take care.
Absolutely, Jeff. It was my pleasure. Take care, and I'm looking forward to picking up next time. Have a great one.
Lewis letters we unfold, insights and see